In Luxembourg, the Agency for Nature Conservation and Forestry is working hard to transform former mining sites into biodiversity havens. These iron ore mines in the Minett region were abandoned in the late 1970s. Today, they are among the most beautiful Natura 2000 sites and nature reserves in the country. The iron ore was deposited around 180 million years ago when the region was covered by a shallow sea. Here, ferruginous sediments from the mainland mixed with calcareous sediments from the sea, forming the red calcareous Minett rock, rich in exploitable iron. This also explains the presence of the calcareous dry grassland vegetation here today. Following the open-pit mining without human intervention, the land has been colonized in only a few decades by pioneer forests, primarily birch trees, often with impenetrable scrub. But where there is light, there is also biodiversity. The typical diversity of plant and animal species for these former mining sites can be found in open patches that alternate with more wooded areas. Here, a particularly rare and protected bird in Luxembourg has settled, the woodlark. The woodlark is a characteristic species for dry grasslands, especially in large open areas with only a few trees and bushes. The woodlark needs a lot of insects to feed on. It hunts them in short grass and on rocky ground. It likes to sit on isolated trees and bushes to sing and observe its surroundings. The woodlark is a ground nesting bird. It constructs its nest on the ground, usually in an old grass tussock or at the foot of a bush. The woodlark uses these short, dry grasslands for hunting insects and for shelter. Here, it can move discreetly on the ground without being spotted by predators, and it can build its nest. The management of the nature reserves promotes all of the woodlark's needs. With the protection of the woodlark, the managers equally protect the site's overall biodiversity. Everything is linked in nature. Regular interventions into nature are necessary to meet the needs of the woodlark as well as those of other species. Chainsaws and excavators are used to reopen overgrown dry grasslands. Excavators extract the roots of trees and bushes and pick up cut branches. The vegetation is cleared completely, and in some places the soil is stripped down to the bedrock. Here, new grasslands develop over time. After a few years, workers may need to return to clear invasive brush again with excavators. Slowly, a landscape mosaic emerges in which animals and plants thrive. To avoid the establishment of dense vegetation, it's sometimes necessary to resort to mowing. This is done outside of the breeding period. Either brush cutters or sickle bars are used. Specialized workers know precisely which plants need to be eliminated. On the rock outcrops created, the work often remains manual. To keep them open, most of the dry grasslands are grazed with a herd of sheep and goats. The goats are particularly good at keeping the scrub short. The herd is owned by a regional farmer. A professional shepherd and his border collies look after the animals and guide their movements. There are refuge areas and closed trails in the nature reserves that are not accessible to the public. Tranquility, especially during the nesting season from March to September, is very important. However, the objective is not to prevent people from entering the nature reserves altogether. In fact, there is an elaborate network of hiking and mountain bike trails. These trails are challenging for hobby and for experienced mountain bikers alike. This way there is conscious visitor guidance and the tranquility of the breeding areas is protected. A big problem is unleashed dogs, especially during the breeding period. These images illustrate all too well the danger to the breeding birds. And it's so easy. Everywhere along the trails, signposts indicate the right behavior. This also helps other ground nesting birds, such as the tree pipit and the yellow bunting, which can be seen regularly on the sites. The refuge areas are discreetly marked using tree trunks in order not to affect the landscape too much. The number of closed trails is marginal compared to the overall network of trails. Everywhere hikers have the possibility to discover nature, and this within these former industrial sites with their abundant red rock walls and terraces. The nature conservation interventions also highlight these old industrial relics. Ornithologists monitor the woodlark population annually. In this way, they evaluate the effectiveness of the implemented management. All potential breeding areas are monitored in order to map territories and habitat quality. A small loudspeaker plays the woodlark's song to attract territorial males, which quickly respond.
Die hat jetzt mit Sicherheit hier ihr Revier, weil die ist da rausgekommen. Reaktion, fliegt, steckt ihr Revier ab und landet wieder in demselben Bereich, wo sie hochgekommen ist. Und dann weißt du, okay, da ist definitiv das Revierzentrum. Da wird die Art eingetragen. War jetzt ein Pärchen, 2 Individuen, klar zur Brutzeit geeigneten Habitat, zack, und dann ist es gespeichert.
In 2022, 24 woodlark territories were counted in the former mining sites, In 2019, only 18 were recorded. With about 10 territories, Lallengaberg is the most important woodlark breeding site in Luxembourg. The breeding population in the former mines represents about 80% of the country's breeding pairs. The mining of the iron ore was a brutal intervention into nature by humans, but nature recovered quickly. Now we need to maintain these sites for the benefit of the visitors as well as the breeding birds. If everyone respects the official trails and the few restrictions, future visitors will be able to experience this extraordinary biodiversity. In our hearts, we all carry the desire to experience wild nature. Who would have thought that this beautiful nature experience exists in the midst of this densely populated Minett region in the south of Luxembourg?